We're on the road with In Focus today. We're talking with Douglas County Commissioners. We have Mark Straub, Dan Sutton, and Kyle Steinberg joining us here at the 19th Street Land and Services Building, and getting ready to start another week of commission meetings. And let's talk about some of the items you have on this week's agenda. I think first and foremost is the meeting you're having up in Bridgeport later this week to discuss some road issues with the folks up there. This is your district, Mark.
It is.
So pretty contentious issue up there as well, as I understand.
Well, I think anytime you take a position where you need to make a tough decision like closing a road, it definitely gets the attention of some folks. This is an issue that didn't happen overnight. It's been a road, a portion of the road that's been unstable for decades, probably almost 100 years, in fact. And so it's reached a point where we last year had spent about just under $300,000 to try to stabilize the road and get a few more years out of it. And actually, just here in the last several weeks, the road is actually failing. And we have video and pictures that demonstrate this, where a large portion of the road is sloughing off. And so for us, the second to the last thing that we want to do is close the road, especially knowing that it will add some inconvenience. It's not the primary or the only way in and out for those 9 or 10 families up there, but it does add about 15 to 20 minutes to the route. But I say it's the second to the last thing we want to do. The first thing that we don't want to ever have to do is wake up and explain why somebody lost their life or was injured because we didn't take appropriate actions.
Well, as county commissioners, this is your primary function, is to maintain county roads. And Elam Road, I think is the name of the road you're talking about,
Correct.
Is one of the older primitive roads, I guess, that we have in the county, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it was originally put in around the turn of last century. And even at that point in time, we've gone through archival documentation of the road, trying to research its history, and discovered documents that indicated it was punched through what was at that point in time called a seep, which simply indicates a wet spot or a geologically unstable area. And with respect to the farmers that did that in the early 1900s, they didn't have the knowledge to know what kind of possibilities that would have. At some point in time, the county ended up taking that road, and we've put a good deal of time, effort, man hours into trying to keep it open, to the extent that we did an extensive attempted repair this last year. We removed a lot of soil and terraced the bank back in an effort to make it more stable. And we ended up having to pull the crew off of that section of road because as we were trying to repair it, it was failing as we were doing it. And it's truly a dangerous area. And, roads are one of our primary responsibilities, but the life and safety of the citizens I think of as being my number one responsibility in Douglas County. And so we're open to discussion. We're going to go up to Bridgeport Wednesday and meet with the city council and the residents that are concerned up there, and make sure that they have complete and accurate information, because I'm not certain that the conversations that are happening outside of this area are accurate. And the best thing that we can do for the residents up there is give them the accurate information. Like Commissioner Straub said, we don't want to wake up in the morning and find out somebody was killed on that road.
Well, doesn't it come down to cost benefit too, Kyle Steinberg, the number of people that it serves versus the amount of money you'd have to spend on it and who that would impact?
It does. We make a lot of decisions, and what the decisions we have to make, we might make the right decision, albeit the unpopular one. This isn't a decision moving forward. Whatever we decide to do, it hasn't been just developed overnight. Like Mark said, we spent a significant amount of money. Part of that money before his terms that started here was hydrologic studies, geotechnical studies. We had engineering firms out there. We drilled monitoring wells. We really tried to understand what was happening with this slide area so we can, try to get, make an attempt to fix it. Unfortunately, due to the depth of the slide and the slip plane of the slope, it's just not feasible to go in there and fix that portion of the road where it's currently located. And one of the reasons we want to go up there Wednesday, kind of like Dan alluded to, is to address some of the concerns and listen to the people, but also there's some misnomers out there that we can just go and push a new road in, and it's really just that easy. It's not. Even if we wanted it to be, it just doesn't happen like that anymore. Unfortunately, you have Departments of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Natural Resources, Bureaus of Land Management. Just the permitting processes and fees alone are astronomical, let alone them allowing you to go through some of their areas because they're the adjoining property owners up there. So relocating the road would be just an arduous task and an enormously expensive one at that. It's not as simple as just taking a D8 cat and going and pushing a new road in like it used to be. It just doesn't work like that anymore. To give you an example, just our permitting fees when we went and did the work up there, just on that small section of road, because the road had slid for so many years and we kept kind of recarving the road out, we slowly crept our way onto, I think it was BLM ground, and just the permit fee for them alone, just to go and reestablish the road back onto our ground and essentially borrow soil from their ground to do that was $20,000. I mean, just to give you an idea of how kind of ridiculous some of this process is. Unfortunately, it is the process, and that is out of our control. So we want to address some of these concerns, and people might not be aware of really how difficult it is to do a project in this current climate with following all the rules and guidelines, and we have to do it appropriately. We can't go out there and do these things. We can't cowboy them in. As much as I'd love to, we just can't do it.
Well, those of us that live in Douglas County know that when you really look at the county as a whole, 85%, I think, of your roads are primitive. They're not even paved.
Right.
So those of us that live in the greater Wenatchee area really can't fully appreciate what the rest of the county has to cope with.
And when we make those decisions, Steve, noting that we have so many roads to care for, we have limited resources, and we have to make the best decisions that affect the most people and have the greatest economic effect on the county. So with those resources that we do have, so we have to make those hard decisions, and unfortunately, this is one of them.
Well, in a large, I just wanted to kind of reiterate on that the perimeter road status doesn't mean that they don't require maintenance. There's a large percentage of our primitive roads that do get maintained. I mean, albeit they don't get maintained every week, but we are up there, annually or biannually, in the spring and fall, grading the roads and, rock raking them and trying to make them passable and, reestablish ditches in a lot of the areas. So they do require constant maintenance as well. So,
A question, I guess, to play the devil's advocate. Does the rest of the county suffer because we spend so much money on transportation projects in this part of the county, in the urban
Actually, I think that's actually
a misnomer?
a misnomer. It really is, because by far the greatest portion of dollars spent on roads in Douglas County are in the rural areas. For one thing, anything in East Wenatchee proper is city property. So the county isn't expending funds on city property. They're doing it out in the county. And as Commissioner Steinberg said, there are a lot of rural roads out there that we're maintaining. We're doing a gravel shot on. We're reestablishing ditches for stormwater or for runoff, which can be incredibly destructive to roads if you don't keep those cleaned out and cleared. A heavy storm can wash a road out. And so we have county crews out working in the proper weather constantly. From spring until the snow flies, they're out working literally every day out in the county on the roads.
It really is simple economics. A road doesn't cost any less, depending on what type of road you're building, it costs X, right? So if that road services 5 households, it still costs X to build. If it serves 2 households, it still costs X to build. So, the more rural you are, the less cost benefit analysis that, you know, the less is there. It's cost more, less benefit, it's serving less people. Doesn't mean it's any less important, but from a strictly economic point, it's pretty simple math.
Again, we're talking with the Douglas County Commissioners this morning here in East Wenatchee at the Land Services Building. Another topic I know that you've been following very closely, and we had a chance to talk with Commissioner Steinberg about earlier, is regarding the PUD and its planned service rate increases, especially for the data service, server farms, if you will, and those data centers. Have you heard anything more, had any more communication with the PUD on that particular topic, Kyle? And
As a matter of fact, I did. Last Friday, I actually reached out to the manager of the PUD, Gary Ivory, and had a one-on-one meeting with just he and I, which I really appreciate him taking the time out of his busy schedule to meet with me. And, you know, I think myself and Douglas County and the board just have some, you know, unanswered questions. And what we're looking for out of this process is just to understand their needs. We want to collaborate with them. We want to work with them. And, you know, we want to have this be more of an inclusive conversation, just due to the magnitude of, you know, what could possibly happen based on their decisions. We really, you know, want to understand, you know, where they're going. I know they have a Wells Dam project they're looking at doing, but it sounds by talking to Gary Ivory that it's kind of a new development based on some of the happenings in California last year with some of their failures at earthen dams, or a earthen dam. Some of the engineers surrounding some of the permitting or renewals of permitting and the requirements therein too have kind of tightened up a little bit, I guess you could say. So they think that they might have some expenses in bolstering up that portion of Wells Dam. But it sounds like it might be unknown what those expenses are. So, you know, again, we just want to have an inclusive conversation. You know, when you're looking at affecting the largest taxpayer in Douglas County, it's nothing to take lightly, because albeit their rate increases might not impact the PUD, it will impact everybody else. So that means your school systems, your fire departments, your parks and recreation departments, your library, Douglas County roads. And we were just talking about roads, you know, that they're a contributor over $1.3 million a year to our road systems. And that money is used all over the county, not just here in East Wenatchee area. It's used all over the county, you know, to Douglas County itself. So, you know, a decision that could impact their business to the point of making it not viable, or at least to the point where they won't expand here in Douglas County, is alarming and concerning. And so we want to make sure that we work with the PUD. We're there to support them and help them, and just have an inclusive conversation, and that we realize as a community that a Douglas County ratepayer is also a Douglas County taxpayer. And we want to make sure that we don't make a short-sighted decision, or that the PUD doesn't, you know, to keep a rate low, because that's their mission, that's their statement, you know, that's their mission statement, that they're going to keep their rates low at the best rates they can for their ratepayers. But if that comes at the cost of all these other taxing agencies having a budget shortfall that has to be made up through additional revenues, or either that, cut services, and this is the only two choices you have. You know, you either cut your services or you increase your revenue some other way. And the only other way to increase revenues without a new major business coming into town is the rest of the, you know, citizens of Douglas County to pick up that tax burden. So, you know, it's a really complex issue. And I think everybody was just taken aback by how fast they were kind of moving with it at the end of last year. So it seems to have slowed down a little bit. There's a lot of public outcry and public meetings, and
a little more deliberation then.
yeah, we just, it's a bigger conversation to be had when I think you're going to impact that many of their ratepayers and taxpayers. And we don't want to put any more burden on you know, our residents here for any more taxes, you know, and so we hope that a decision by another agency doesn't have to lend itself to that. So we look forward to working with the PUD and the PUD commissioners, and, you know, Gary Ivory in whatever capacity they allow us to, and having more conversations to try to get this issue resolved to everyone's best benefit.
Okay. No one operates successfully in a vacuum, that's for sure.
Certainly not in our county.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Anything else you'd like to share with us for the good of the order before we let you go?
Looking forward to a successful 2020.
Good deal. All right. Well, thanks for joining us here on In Focus. I'm Steve Hare for NCW Life.